The Full Circle Podcast. Compelling interviews and incredible tales from Colorado's western slope, from the mountains to the desert. Christi Reese and her team hear from the movers, shakers, and characters of the Grand Valley and surrounding mountain towns that make the western slope the place we all love. You'll learn, you'll laugh, you'll love with The Full Circle. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited today to talk to our extra special guest, Tim Foster, president of Colorado Mesa University. Tim, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Christi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, last month we talked to your brother, and he was quite entertaining. So you got a little bit of something to live up to.
He's way more entertaining than I am.
I'm sure he would say that too.
That's true.
Well, we are so sad that you are leaving CMU, but we're happy for you too. I mean, obviously you deserve a little bit of break. You've been working so hard at our amazing university here in town. Let's start with talking a little bit about your background. And you grew up in Grand Junction, right?
That's true. I did. Born and raised, and went to school all the way through high school, little old Grand Junction High School. Kind of amazing it's still standing, really, but that's a different.
Well, right. We can talk about that some other time, right? It needs to not be standing anymore, I think. Did you think you wanted to get out of here? I mean, you left for a while and then came back. Did you think you would come back to Grand Junction to work?
I don't know. I don't know that I'm not a big advanced planner. And so certainly, I was excited to go to school out of town, out of state. It's funny when you watch and think about how folks do it nowadays. I applied to 3 schools, Brown, Amherst, and Kenyon College. Didn't visit any of them, and just
really,
and actually went to Kenyon because the football coach recruited me. And it just so happened my high school coach, Ron Stoneburner, grew up in a little town right next to where this college was, and his comment was, "I wasn't smart enough to go there, so you should go there." Oh, well, okay, I'll take a look at them. So off I went.
And we know from talking to your brother that skiing was a big part of your childhood and your family.
Yeah, we just had a lot of fun in those days. And I think with the community, it's interesting growing up here and watching. And Powderhorn was a community effort. It was really everybody in town putting $100 in, and electricians going up there and working on the lifts and getting lift tickets in exchange. To contract, everybody who worked up there really was a labor of love. And so that was not a ski area that some wealthy person came and was going to make a lot of money with. It was a community that wanted a community ski area for their kids and families to ski at.
Mm-hmm. Well, and wow, the skiing's been so good the last few weeks. And after talking to Mike about, the history up there a little bit, it really has given me a different perspective when I'm up there. And I love that. Thinking about the old days.
Yeah, it was funny when we were kids, it was, okay, let's go. We're going to go. And they'd cut runs, and we'd make one of those bucket brigades and throw logs off into the trees. And so when people say, hey, let's go ski the trees, it's like, I know what's in those trees. You don't want to go banging off a racer's edge, because there's a lot of logs just right off the edge there.
Right. Wow. That's neat. And you also swim a lot, and you did growing up as a lot of your family members did, and that's still a passion of yours, I hear.
It's something we try to do 3 days a week or 4 days a week. And, we've gone and done the escape from Alcatraz a couple times, where you go out and jump in the water and swim in. So that's a fun swim. Yeah.
Well, what's the distance on that?
It's a couple miles, but it's partly the water's cold and currents are strong, all those sorts of things. When you sign up, I was just telling somebody this over lunch, you initial 5 different times that you could be swept out under the Golden Gate Bridge, get hypothermia, get attacked by a harbor seal, get attacked by a great white shark, get run over by some major shipping lane, and all of them are, yes, I could die, and I know that, and I really want to go do this.
I'm going to do it anyway.
You're going to get out there and go, why? Whose idea was this? This is not a good idea.
What's your favorite distance to swim?
I do it for the exercise, so I don't compete anymore. I'm too old to compete.
But every week, every day, how often do you swim?
At least 3 days, if not 4 or 5. And then in the summertime, ride my bike, as the weather gets better. and I'll ride to, and Grand Junction's great because I can ride my bike to work, have a frustrating day, ride my bike home.
Yeah.
Home, I'm happy, kind of burn all that out.
Mm-hmm. So your love of bike riding, did that help influence what's happened with CMU and how you have integrated cycling so much into that community?
I think it's just, I'm a believer in student athletes, and so, and what they bring and what they learn through their sport that's complementary of their academic experience. And, it's part of being a Division II. We had a number of Division I conferences approach us here a couple of years ago and said, hey, wouldn't you all like to be Division I? Because that's so wonderful. Mm-hmm. And we said, no. I think Division I has lost its way and has got emphasis on the wrong things. It's becoming, semi-pro athletics. And how do I prepare myself for a professional career? And so really cycling is part of that. Swimming is part of that. Triathletes, beach volleyball. I always want to call it sand, but I was just meeting with the young women who play beach for us. But they're just a great group of young people who are competing at a high level. Mm-hmm. And are really working hard at their academics too. I'm
taking tennis lessons with a CMU tennis player. Yeah. And I absolutely love it. And he's so great. Yeah. Really enjoying that. So talk a little bit about what your goal was when you first took the role. You've been at CMU 17 years. What did you see in the school that excited you, and what was your vision at the time when you started there?
Just think, when I started, you were in elementary school.
Oh, mm-hmm. Yes, I was. Thank you.
Pinned that down. At the time, I had, I'm kind of a non-traditional, I am a non-traditional president. And so I did not start my career saying, I want to be a college president. It just sort of worked out that way serendipitously. But looking at, and so I had joined then Governor Owen's cabinet and ran the Department of Higher Ed for a number of years. And then it was now time to go find something new to do. And sort of from that education I gained, we had schools saying, hey, would you like to be a president here, there, or elsewhere?
So you had numerous job offers and opportunities.
Well, let's just say we interviewed at one and my wife said she wouldn't live there. So we left before we completed that interview. But this one, just the culture is different at Mesa. The people, I think it's this wonderful kind of combination of, we call them teacher scholars. We have faculty who are really active in their scholarship and very well regarded and do really high level work. Aparna Palmer has discovered what's called a tire guard, which is a microscopic oceanic animal, and just story after story after story of folks like that, but they love to teach. And so they kind of take that and combine it. And so knowing a little bit about it, I guess I have a sister, one of my sisters went to Stanford, and so got interrupted because she had an illness and had to come home. And she will tell you still today that the best professor she ever had was a professor at Mesa. And so she was back here in Grand Junction taking classes, and just, wow, he was amazing. And so there you are, comparing, to one of the premier schools in the country. And I would tell you, I think we go toe to toe, not as a research institution, but as a place to get an education. So knowing that background, and then we were fortunate that we used to be in this system with Adams, Western, Metro, and us. And that was that was management by least common denominator. So whoever was not performing well, all the resources were funneled to prop them up. Mm-hmm. And so a year before I came, they had spun out and we got our own board. And so you looked at getting our own board and realizing that the leadership here had not done a good job. So you don't want to follow John Wooden, right? You want to follow the guy who didn't have a great, and they were spending more money than they were bringing in, which is not a good approach. But knowing, to me, it was just ready to go. That culture thing and what we had to offer. And if we were successful, the capacity to take that success and reinvest it in the operation would just say we can go bigger, better, bigger,
Yeah.
really have a better impact.
Well, it's amazing what you've done. And I know it's not a single person effort. You've had a team around you but you've done amazing things. And I think the biggest question I think of, because I've been in Grand Junction for 20 years almost, and I was amazed at how you were able to expand the school during the recession when the economy was really suffering. How did you accomplish that?
There's an old John Dillinger quote, right? And they asked him, why do you rob banks? And he said, well, that's where the money is, right? And so it really is, in this arena, you got to be opportunistic. And so sometimes the money is at the legislature, sometimes the money is in the enterprise. And so we could borrow money, and we were very fortunate. Our debt is at 3%. And so we would borrow money in areas like housing, which will pay for itself. Then you have the city and county helping us and giving us money. And then we have just a great, very generous community also writing checks to us. I mean, we just cut the ribbon on our Center for Reflection, and, Craig Springer and Robert Bray, they've helped raise over $500,000 to help build that building.
I can't wait to see that. What a phenomenal idea that is.
You've got to see it. Is Mont Atkinson, who taught music for us, walked through it, and he came out and said, it is amazing. You just feel this calm spirit in that building. And so when you want to come, let me know, because I got to swipe you in with a MAV card, because you have to act. So you got to have a swipe card.
Thank you. I'd love to see it. And what a great thing during this challenging time of COVID. I mean, really great timing on that.
For students to be able to go in there, and they actually used it the other night. They do a day of remembrance, and so there's a grotto where they can light candles and do those sorts of things and think about students who've passed away in the last decade.
Wow, that's awesome. You are known for being able to execute on your goals and your vision. How would you describe your leadership style?
I'm hands off with folks. The Dallas Cowboys built a reputation on drafting football players, and it was the best athlete available, right? And so taking and finding folks that were just really talented and then plugging them in. And I would tell you, I think my strength is analyzing talent and finding people who are very bright. John Marshall would be a classic example. He was running campaigns. I met him because he was working for the governor right after he graduated. So he's running campaigns, and I'm like, John, running campaigns is not the way to raise a family, and you're starting to have kids, and so why don't you come run the foundation? And then he did a wonderful job there. And so great, now let's move you over and let you run admissions and financial aid. And so Derek Wagner, Liz Meyer, you can just keep going through Kurt Hass, all the people, Jeremy Brown, that we have that are just, I don't have to push them. They push themselves. Our second level down, we have a young woman who was an All-American basketball player for us, Shreya Seltzer, who is just so driven and so talented. And so it's just, they have ideas, and you just say, all right. And I think you have to have a capacity for failure. You appreciate that being in the real estate business, right?
Yep.
Not every project is going to be a dead winner. And so I think we have folks on this campus that understand, we think this will work, but it isn't going to be, it didn't work, you're fired, right?
Yeah.
There's that old story about a young man who started at IBM. This is a true story. Started at IBM. They gave him a big project, spent a couple $1 million, came back and went to the CEO and said, total failure, you need to fire me. And the CEO said, we just invested $2 million in your education. We're not going to fire you. I think you're having a capacity for failing. And then everybody understands our mission, and it's how do you educate kids and non-traditional students, and how do you change sort of the human capital in Western Colorado. So
Yeah.
that's easy to do when you have that kind of common purpose.
Building the team is the most important thing, bringing the right people together and finding the right niche for them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. You just mentioned untraditional students. You have a lot of untraditional students at CMU, and how great is that?
You know, it's so fascinating, and oftentimes we'll have parents and kids, right? And that is a young student's worst nightmare. When your mom is in the class with you, and guess what? She's not partying, she's not playing, she's studying, and she's going to set the curve, and then she's going to look at you and say, "What the hell were you doing?" And we've had more than one instance.
She's speaking up, and
they hate it. It's like you got to tell the parent, okay, maybe you got to go a little less hard because you're really making life tough on your son or daughter.
Love it. And you also have a lot of first generation students.
2/3 of our student population is either first gen or low income, which is, and and this is part of, I think, why the city and the county, because we're unique in our community's investment in this institution. In CU Boulder sues CU to stop them from doing things, and here they invest in students, and so I get we want to have nice streets and sewer and water, but human capital is going to define who's successful in our time, and so I think investing in people, I think they're so smart to do that. And there's people who, that's not your core mission. And I say, missions evolve, and the world has evolved, and people talent has never been more important.
That's for sure. And wow, in this change of this era of technology, when things are going at lightning speed, we have to be evolving all the time.
Yeah, and just being flexible. And that's these kids. You think about when I went to school, and I teach a class, and I say to students, you have all my sympathy, because I got a book, maybe a couple other books, and I knew what was in them was accurate because people had proved them. And you all have to deal with just this absolute cascade of information and try to figure out what's accurate and what's not. So good on you, but I wouldn't want to be you guys.
Super challenging. So much information. I see that in my kids. I've got one in middle school and one in high school, and just I think about the difference of, we had a set of Encyclopedia Britannicas, right? And
exactly.
The library where I was when I grew up. So that's all the resources I have, and maybe a textbook, but it's vastly different now.
Totally.
And weeding through all of that to find the correct answers for things is challenging, for sure.
How you verify it, and what do you rely on, and what's opinion and what's fact, and it's your children it's a whole different world.
Yeah. Well, I asked my team earlier today if you could ask Tim Foster any question, what would you ask him? So I have some questions from my team members. One is, how do you recruit for the school? What kind of students are you looking for? What do you do to recruit? And how do you recruit faculty as well as students?
Two totally different approaches. We don't have to recruit faculty. We get huge applications because as you look across the country, we're one of the few schools that's growing and financially stable and successful. And so faculty from engineering, for example, we had a faculty member from one of the two research universities in Colorado apply. And I interview all the faculty we consider hiring. And so I'm sitting there with this young man, and I say, okay, I've got to ask you this question. At this university, we're going to pay you, because he's an engineering faculty, 6 figures. They pay you 6 figures plus 20%. So you're going to take a 20% haircut to come here. You teach a 2-course load. We are going to require you to teach 4. You're going to get paid less and teach more. And his answer was, I teach a 341 engineering class. I have 120 students in it. And I have 8 TAs, and I hate my job. I will teach here. I'll teach a 4-course load. Your average enrollment is less than 30. So in 4 courses, I'll teach fewer students than I teach in 1 course, and I'll actually get to have that interaction with them. So yeah, I'm willing to take a pay cut to come there. I was like, okay.
so many factors play into that. It's not just about the living atmosphere that they'll have in this community, but also that teacher-student ratio and the beautiful campus that you have built.
Well, and it's our community. I tell you, we do leverage off what we call the Pinecone discount, where you're going to come over here and guess what? I can go skiing and not sit in traffic. You want to go skiing? You want to go around the river? You want to go fishing? You want to ride your bike? You aren't going to sit in 2 hours worth of traffic to gain 10 miles or what have you. But students, we look really kind of small city, big town, rural. And so we recruit Reno. We don't recruit Las Vegas, Nevada. We'll recruit Lakewood. We'll recruit Littleton. We'll recruit Greeley, Fort Collins. Denver, not so much, because those kids are going to come here and go, wow, this is so boring. There's nothing to do. Whereas a kid from those other places are, oh, cool, I can go up on the Mesa. I can go do all these things, or I can make my own fun, because they're used to doing that.
Yeah.
So they will love it. A big city kid's going to think they've gone into the netherlands.
Right, there's nothing to do here. One of our team members asked about the Hawaii connection. What is the Hawaii connection with CMU?
It's interesting. Hawaii is a very tightly knit state. And so we got lucky and got a number of Hawaiian students. We had a volleyball coach, Rusty Crick, who was retired military, and so he could fly free. And so he would fly to Hawaii and recruit volleyball players. And so from volleyball players became football players, became baseball players. And interestingly enough, the sort of social friendly nature of the West is the same as Hawaii. And so they really enjoy that. And then slowly but surely, pretty much if you run into a Polynesian in this town, they're probably a CMU grad. And they wrap their arms around those students. When I was here early on, we went to Hawaii and we're out in the hinterlands with my kids. And this young kid says to one of my children, "Where are you from?" "Grand Junction." "Oh, that's where Mesa is." And I looked at him and I said, there's people in Denver, Colorado that don't know Mesa is in Grand Junction.
Yeah.
And who knows where Hawaii? And so, my friend or my cousin or my sister goes there. It was just, so that sort of begets itself, and they really have a culture, and it's a great group of kids.
Yeah, it's really neat to see a culture like that here in the mountains. And
they liven the campus up, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, awesome. Back to first generation students. So we were able to donate some money to the First Generation Scholarship Fund, which was really exciting to us because we really didn't know much about the program. And we got really interested in learning more. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that's come about?
So we talked a little bit about human capital is the, and you see the stats I see. You see 80%, 90% of jobs today and tomorrow require some college, if not a 2-year degree or 4-year degree. And yet when you look at our communities, and if you do Montrose, Delta, Mesa, and Garfield, you have almost 70% of the population of Western Colorado, the western half of the state.
Wow.
And none of those communities are above 25% of their population with a degree. And so you really say, our path forward, and I mean 1 year, 2 year, 4 year, I don't care, but you got to have something post high school. And so that means, because that's the level of educational attainment, that 75% of the population's parents probably didn't go to college. Mm-hmm. And so if we're really going to elevate and make this a place where folks can make a living and afford a house and all those sorts of things, we've got to get them in and out of college. And so, and again, the electric lineman program, 1 year program, they're the kids out there off at 29 Road that climb all the poles and keep our electricity. Average salary, that's $90,000.
Fantastic.
So it's not all, and that's where people get confused. Hey, college isn't for everybody. It's like, you need to understand college is a broader conversation than what we immediately think of, which are, liberal arts and those sorts of things. There's all sorts of college. And so and thank you for donating, because those kids, those students have no idea. And all they do is read stories about, oh my gosh, college is $50,000 a year. And you go, no, It's not. And there's lots of financial aid available. and you can and you have to go.
Yeah. Before I get to our next question from our team, you talked about linemen and some of those career things, and you've built some really strong relationships with the other educational institutions in our community. How important is that to the strength of CMU?
I would say just, our relationship with District 51, with, and with hospitals and everybody else is just, it is who we are, and it's part of the DNA of our community, that people don't just sort of silo themselves and say, I'm not interested in what you do. We've got our own problems. And they really jump in and are open arms. And it makes a big difference. It allows us to do things with less resources that other folks just shake their heads and go, how do y'all do that? And Gary Harmon, who wrote for the Daily Sentinel one time, I said, there is not another university or college that has a community who donates money, a city or a county that gives money. And he didn't believe me. The next thing I know, I'm getting all these presidents calling, asking, because he called them. And they're, how do you get the city to give you money? And I said, nothing I did. It's something this community does. They just support one another. And we do things with this. We stood up a police academy because GJPD came to us and said, we need a police academy. We're not getting what we want out of the other academies. We will put people power or resources into it. You all have the knowledge base to do that. And so again, here you go. Now we're turning out college educated police officers, and the data out there says college educated police officers don't commit the kind of things that had everybody rioting in the streets and protesting this summer. And so they just are much better educated, and they think about what they're doing more.
Yeah, wow. I have a question from Suzanne on our team, and she said years ago when she attended Mesa, she got a B in hiking, and she was wondering if you could look into that for her.
Wants me to fix that grade?
Yeah.
Tell her maybe.
She's just perplexed how that happens. How do I get a B?
I'm perplexed too. Was she not going to hiking class, or was she?
I guess she wasn't going fast enough or something.
No, I don't know. We'd have to talk. If she wants, I'll look it up and let you know why she got a B. I don't think she wants that to happen.
There must be some notes somewhere. Tim, obviously COVID has had you face a number of challenges, unprecedented. I mean, we throw that word around a lot, but it has been really just a crazy time. Especially for schools. I mean, businesses have suffered and businesses have had to make changes, but schools, totally different ballgame. Talk about that challenge and some of the other challenges that you faced while you've been in tenure there.
Well, and you're right. COVID has been an interesting challenge for us, and I guess we're a little more. We're not risk averse, I guess you could say. And so we sat down as a team early on back in March and April and said, what are we going to do in the fall? Because this is going to be here then. And we had to send everybody home. We went online. And I think our faculty tried really hard, but it was not great. And we knew that. And so in April, we said, we're going to come back live. And we're going to come back live as long as we can. And our dream would be to get to Thanksgiving and have completed the semester live and not had any major incidents. And I give a lot of credit to, again, John Marshall and the folks here, because everybody jumped in. We had coaches, doing COVID tests and just everything under the sun. But I also will tell you, again, it's this community we have. So we reach out to Mesa County Health, Community Hospital, St. Mary's, who have really bright, talented folks who understand pandemics and infectious disease. And we said, would you all serve as sort of a board for us to bring plans to, here's how we're going to deal with dining, here's how we're going to deal with classrooms, recreation, athletics. There's an old saying that a campus is a village in the middle of a city, because literally everything that you do in the city, we do on campus. And to their credit, they said, absolutely. And early on, one of the examples of that was we were talking to them about, okay, we're trying to figure out what to do with residence halls. And so, and you could tell immediately they're all thinking about the residence hall that they experienced. And we said, whoa, we have soup to nuts when it comes, we have the old style dorms, we have suites, we have apartments, we Jack and Jill's.
Mhm.
And so as a group, 8 of them came over here and spent an afternoon touring our residence halls so they could get an appreciation for. And so then we could have those groups that we formed on campus bring plans up and say, all right, we're going to try this. And they would poke holes in it and say, you need to try something different. And then we've been fortunate with other partnerships. Had I told you we were going to be in partnership with Harvard and MIT, they were going to be singing our praises in terms of what we're doing, you would have said, nah. But Dr. Savetti, who's like the nation's leading expert in infectious disease and pandemics, will tell you, and she's lectured in classes for us here and just is so impressed. And she goes back to culture and said it is the culture of this place that really rings true. And so that's probably been our biggest challenge, is really trying to get through, trying to make sure that we have students who can go to class, have as normal of an experience as they possibly can. And they've been amazing. The students have been super on board and compliant. And
Yeah.
But Grand Junction's a different place when it comes to the pandemic. You've been to Denver. I've been to Denver. They're in a whole, wow, we are so much closer to normal.
Yeah.
Even in our altered state that we all whine about.
Yeah.
Wow, Denver's.
Yeah, we forget sometimes because we are a little bit insulated from that craziness.
And our health department, I will tell you, I would say our leadership at the health department, Jeff Kerr, #1 in the country, #1 in the state. I mean, I'd put him up against it. Super pragmatic, but also, very real about here's what we have to do. And I hate to do this, but we are going to have to do that. But advocating for balancing, public health, which also takes into account the health of people and economy, and can you make a living? Can you pay your rent? So he's the man of the year. I mean,
Yeah.
He really has steered us through this.
Well, I appreciate you calling him out because you've done so much and your leadership has been so appreciated. But yeah, there's a lot of people in this community who have really made it help us get through this time in a much better fashion than we could have otherwise.
We've been more successful than I thought we ever would have a shot at being.
Yeah. And what are some of the other challenges or things that you wanted to accomplish at CMU that maybe just weren't able to get done? Or
I would say you try things and they fail. For a long time, the hotel about cost me my sanity. We had hired a hotel manager. That was a risky thing to do, and some of the trustees were, are you sure you want to? I said, look, we have a hospitality management, we have culinary, we need a teaching hotel. But we lost our management company just about the time we were getting ready to finish that hotel, and it was like, oh, I know what I don't know how to do, which is run a hotel. But we got very lucky. There was a young man who retired from Aspen Ski Corp who stepped in. He said, I always love when people, I'm going to give you 10 hours, 20 hours. Next thing you know, he's like 50, 60 hours. And he's just, he got us open.
Wow.
And we found a great partner and off we go.
How many other schools have something like that? I think that's such a great addition to the campus and the community.
A couple. And actually the firm we have manages a number of them on the eastern part of the country. And so that was one of the reasons we picked them, is they understood we want students to work back of the house, front of the house. We want students to wait tables. We want them in the kitchen. And it is interesting when a young person comes out and is going to provide whatever service. When they're a student, you give them a little more slack. And we all enjoy, they're funny. Oh, where are you from? What are you doing? You just get a little more of that personal story out of them.
Yeah. It's a great restaurant. Love it. Haven't stayed at the hotel yet, but love the restaurant.
You got to stay in the hotel. Take your kids, and this is Tim's addition to the hotel, and I claim credit for this. We have a bunked king bed. So it's a king bed above a king bed.
Oh, wow.
And so if you have friends coming with little kids, It is like little kids love being in a king bed up above mom and dad.
Yeah.
Your junior high and high school student would particularly appreciate it.
I should try that out.
They are two of the biggest beds. You walk in and go, whoa, that's a lot of bed.
That's really fun. Well, on the flip side, we've talked about the challenges. You've accomplished so much. I mean, so many changes at CMU. What are you most proud of? I'm sure there's a long list, but give us some of the highlights for your time.
Our retention, when I came, our retention was about 50-60%. And I remember talking to our academic vice president and said, I want to get our retention to 80%, because that means students who come here stay and are going to get value out of what they're doing. And she said, Tim, a 10% gain in retention is unheard of. I said, we're going to get to 80. So we're at 77%.
Wow.
So we've a huge jump. Our graduation rate has doubled. And so it's that. And then it's getting to know students. I mean, they are so interesting and so wonderful. I was just talking to a young woman from Montrose, and she said, I've been on campuses all over the country, and I love coming to your campus because students say hello, they open the doors, you can talk to them, they aren't just blowing you off. And we just have really, you come on this campus and, you can come eat lunch in our dining hall for $6, and you sit down, and it will renew your faith in this generation, because they aren't, we always think, oh, that generation, they're pleasant, they're interesting, they're motivated. They have different opinions and perspectives than we do, but they're a great group of kids. They really, and young people and old people, and it's just amazing. So
what's your current enrollment?
We will push just about 9,600 this year.
Was that one of your goals when you started? Did you ever think you'd get to that number? That's a lot of students.
I was cracking up because we were talking about this, and most presidents start on a honeymoon, right? And then it's sort of, they leave with everybody saying, don't let the door hit you. But when I was a non-traditional president, and so I will say those in the academic community and at the Daily Sentinel weren't too wild about yours truly. And I remember, and I love Gary Harmon, but he was sent over here to write a story and front page thing, and I said, well, we're going to do this, and only Gary in print could do, right? And we're going to do that, and sure you are. And we're going to do this, and we're going to grow student population. Oh yeah, good luck with that. And so it just continued to grow, and I think we've been able to hit most of those targets. So yeah, one of those goals was, if you're going to take our population in Western Colorado, those 4 counties, and get us above the statewide average, the state's one of the most educated states in the union, and you're going to stay there, we need to be about 14,000 students, because most of our students stay in Western Colorado. And so that's a big benefit to this university.
Wonderful. So focusing on students a little bit, what is your best advice for college students on how to get the most out of their higher learning experience?
They're in a rush, these kids. And it's like, guys, slow down. It's 4 years. It is the one time. Now, should you try to work, do intern? Absolutely. But they come in, they want to come in with 20 or 30 credits from high school and be out. It's like, there's plenty of time to work. I get it. You can work and support yourself while you're here, and explore different subjects and different topics. I can't tell you how one of my sons thought for sure he wanted to be a business major. Took one business class, poli-sci. And then you say to him, what are you going to do with a political science degree? Go to law school, which is what he did. So sure enough. But it's really encouraging them to explore and really get a sense as to what they want to do.
Well, and so many kids in high school just overload themselves so much. They're taking all these extracurricular and trying to get the best grades and extra classes. And they don't have enough time to sleep. And I think about my kids and going to college, and I want them to, explore and really experience life away from
local kids. It was funny. My oldest son decided he was going to come here, and he played lacrosse for our team. And early on, he said, well, I'll just live at home. And I said, oh, hell no, you're not going to.
Oh, no.
you need to go live on campus. And I tell you, his friends are from Arizona and California and Hawaii and all over the country, because he came on campus and lived on campus. A totally different experience than living at home. And kids who live at home just tend to come to class, go home, and they only know then the people they were in school with in high school. And now they haven't had a collegiate experience.
Well, selfish question from me. I am a big fan of yours, and I see you as a real risk taker. And you've quoted a number of people during our conversation. I see you take inspiration from a lot of different angles. What's your best advice for business leaders and community leaders on how to get things done? You've been so successful in execution of your ideas. What's your advice on that?
You know, and you gotta, and maybe it's partly is legal training. You gotta understand the other person's perspective, right? And that's difficult to do sometimes because I know what I want to do. Let's go. And so when you're talking to somebody, and you do this in the real estate business, you got, if you got a buyer, you got to understand the seller, and if you got a seller, you got to understand the buyer. And so once you can get yourself into their shoes, and then the difficulty in your profession is getting your client to make that transition and understand, I know you want to sell, but we got to understand what the buyer is trying to get done too. And then we can find where that sweet spot is, where they're going to get what they want and you're going to get what you want, and you aren't going to get all of it. Maybe you get all of it. And yeah, I did a great job, right? You did a great job to make that happen. But at the end of the day, and my dad was a big proponent of win-win negotiation, right?
Win, us too, yeah.
And so
win-lose is not nearly as much fun.
Win-lose is one transaction. You do win-lose, and that's the only one you're going to do, and they're not going to come back. And so we try to always think about, okay, what's the other person's perspective? How do we make it good for them as well as for us? We don't have to get 100%. And we see that a lot, as we're at the state legislature negotiating with other colleges and universities. I always tell our guys, and for 17 years this has been true, we don't want the biggest funding increase. We want number 2 or number 3. Because if you're the biggest, then everybody's unhappy and they're going to make sure you don't get that next year. When you're number 2 or number 3, nobody pays any attention to you. And so second or third, and that's fine. You can be the big project. We'll be the medium-sized project. Everybody's going to say, see, you got a $30 million project. Nobody's going to say, see, you got a $17 million project. But you know what? We can make those work all day long.
Wow. Love it. Love it. All right. The question of the day is, what's next for Tim Foster?
No idea. We're going to go to the San Juan Islands the month of August. Going to go stay on Lopez and then San Juan. And then we're going to come back, and my second son's getting married in September, so we're going to get that done. And on October 1st, I'm probably going to print resumes and walk up and down Main Street and say, who needs a little help? But
we're hiring for an executive assistant here at the Christi Reese Group.
I don't know if my typing skills are or my computer skills are quite there. But in all seriousness, to me, the problem with planning what you're going to do while you're still in your current job, pretty soon your attention is more on what you're going to do than what you're doing. And so we're going to stay focused on doing this. Thankfully, we've had enough success. We can take a couple months off, and then we'll see. Then
regroup and figure out the rest of your life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know one thing. Lisa's not ready for me to be home every day, all day.
That won't be part of the plan.
It's that old Jack Nicholson line, right? Honey, I'm home. We're good. And she'd see her go, ah!
Well, Tim Foster, thank you so much for talking with us on the Full Circle podcast today. It's been a real pleasure, and just can't thank you enough for everything you've done for the school and the community, and just being a part of the community besides being university president, just being a real integral part of our community and a community member. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. You too.
All right.
And thanks for supporting our students.
Absolutely. We love it. Go Mavs.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening today. This is Christi Reese with the Full Circle Podcast. And make sure you follow us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast so you can get notified of upcoming interviews. And we'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for listening. This is Christi Reese signing out from the Full Circle Podcast.